You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
We don't have an evaluation of how many Canadians usually are in the country because they're not obliged to register with Global Affairs Canada. It is a voluntary system. So that's why when people are registered, then they get information from consular services. The embassy, contrary to what certain people were saying, was open on Thanksgiving, and it had also some interruption based on what was happening on the ground.
That's Melanie Joly answering the question, one of many questions today during a press conference where we found out that Canada will be sending a plane, a military plane, to evacuate some Canadians by as early as tomorrow night or into Friday. James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, I just want to ask the question because this is going to be the question I'm going to ask when we get done here today of our listeners. Did Canada do as good a job as possible here? Should it have been a better situation? What do you think?
We have virtually no military infrastructure to speak of. We're cutting funding to the military. Is it the scandal? Some people have said it. I don't believe so. I mean, to point the finger, well, look, the Americans are getting them. There are American military bases every 25 feet in the rest of the world. So they have a far greater infrastructure there. The question I want to have answered this weekend is when that Hercules or whatever, it touches down, or the first one touches down, I want to know how many people get on that plane. Because remember, for many of the Canadians who are there, this is not a tourist resort. This is not a vacation destination. This is their second homeland. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Canadians, I have a sneaking suspicion, are not going to budge. But all that said, I mean, for crying out loud, this is like, to turn around and say, whoa, no, we should have been there day one, that all these other planes are leaving or going. The first thing that occurred to me when I heard the complaints about, well, no, we're not going in, we didn't go in yesterday, is at that time, missiles were flying through the air, and some of them were being pointed at Tel Aviv. Some of them were, as far as I know, were targeting the airport. Can you imagine if one of our planes got hit? What would the argument be then?
No, and that's a fair...
So, there is no right answer to
Okay,
this.
well, maybe
but
that's
when you
the
hear
answer.
that they had to hire a private plane, that people did a private charter, a Dash 8, 27 people getting home.
But that's people doing it on their own who don't want to wait for that plane and can, get out. And there's another couple of those flights we found out leaving as well tomorrow, Jim, and that's fine. That would probably happen regardless. You're right to make the point, although others will simply say, well, wait a sec, there are other countries flying their people out. There are other planes leaving from there. Why are we not one of them?
I would suspect for the same reason that virtually every other government ministry in Canada. I mean, we have had this discussion on other topics. Let's be clear. Canada is not broken, as some people would like to say, but our federal civil service is a shambles. And the idea, however, that, this all should have been yesterday and plus, all these other flights we're hearing about, I'm hearing about. I haven't seen any specific reports on those. I've been going to understand. I don't know. I think Thailand sent a plane in. I don't know what kind of plane or how many people they picked up or where they picked them up. But it seems to me a lot of this, guys, is, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this government doesn't deserve criticism on a lot of things, including this. But I cannot help but get the feeling, and I sort of suggested this when we first spoke about this at the start of the week. This is going to be used politically. And to sort of suggest that, well, all this is this government's fault and the response is ridiculous because of this government's attitude. No, it isn't. This is a surprise attack, a brutal, savage terror attack that nobody, especially the state of Israel, which is supposed to be the most sophisticated intelligence gathering center on earth, saw coming. So that was on Saturday. We are on it's Wednesday. I could understand if Tel Aviv was being shelled or whatever, but and I'm sure there is room for criticism there. But I just get a little queasy when I hear, well, why can't we do what the Americans do? Because we don't have a $19 trillion defense budget.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Okay.
And maybe we can put that energy and being outraged about that into actually trying to do something to help.
Well, exactly.
Let's talk about, so we were talking to Dominique Olivier just within the last half hour, and in a nutshell, she said, don't worry, the house isn't on fire. And I said to Aaron off air, yeah, but I think mine might be. Like, the mortgage is up for renewal and the property taxes keep going up. And, so the budgetary shortfalls, we're going to end up paying the price ultimately.
Okay, well, first of all, Natasha, I got to tell you, don't freak out too much, because this is my fourth sort of like budget crisis that I've seen at City Hall over the course of my career.
Okay.
And it's almost like in October now, I sprinkle the pumpkin spice on my martini, and I wait for the budgetary shortfall announcement from the City of Montreal.
God, I hope you don't. I'm never going drinking with you if that's what you do.
Oh,
You do
come
not.
on.
You do not.
Just pumpkin spice.
Mr. Rand.
All right, fine.
Anyway, all that to tell you, they always do this. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, the lead on this story is buried. The fact that housing sales in the city of Montreal dropped so much that the money they thought they'd be getting from welcome tax simply isn't there, to me, is the bigger story. I see Madame Olivier keeps saying, we have to make some compressions, cutbacks or whatever, but, we can still, the city will still function. And this idea of a hiring freeze, I didn't know there were people out there to hire. I thought we were looking around for employees, but that's just me. But the fact is, I would virtually guarantee you that by the time the budget is tabled, by the end of this year, this perceived possible shortfall will have been dealt with. But it's true, though, that, and I was seeing some remarks there from Alan D'Souza, who himself, when he was in charge of finance under a different administration, had to deal with a couple of these budgetary shortfalls. They always tend to sort of come up, and everybody, it's like, it's Halloween, it's time to get scared. But in the end, they just get dealt with, because one of the last things on earth people understand is cold fusion and how the city of Montreal finances itself. I've spoken to several finance critics over the course of my career who are in the opposition, who would tell me privately, I haven't got the slightest damn idea of how any of this works.
Oh, no.
I don't know where this money's coming from, where it's going. Yeah. The bureaucracy, of course, is Byzantine. So, but, I get the impression, and this is one thing Mr. D'Souza said, and frankly, he's not the only one. This is an administration which I think I can very, very accurately describe as having spent money like a drunken sailor over the past two terms. So the idea that maybe, the waiter came back with the credit card cut in two should not be entirely surprising. But for sure, this economic downturn, I won't call it a recession, but this economic slouch is going to have an effect on services. Although at this point, given all the complaints we're seeing about the services that are being offered at the moment by the City of Montreal, it's going to be hard to tell where exactly the shortfall is.
To your point, Jim, I love that you brought that up. I asked about the, that extra bonus, which Dominique Olivier said, no, it's not an extra bonus. It's the one they couldn't get in 2020 that we promised we'd make up. But regardless of how you frame it, I thought the explanation when that story came out was, we're having trouble hanging on to people, and we want to keep the people we have, so we have to pay them more money. And then today it's like, we're not cutting anybody. We're just not going to fill a vacant position. So which is it?
Well, exactly. And I remember when the whole bonus story came up, there were like three different explanations. One was, we want to keep them. Two, we owed them the money from 2020. Or, B, it was like, it was simply because of some arcane kind of bureaucratic reason. They couldn't keep their story straight on this one. And trust me, I'm sure, with all due respect to Madame Olivier, I'm sure the city's explanation is going to change between now and next month when they get down to the nitty-gritty of tabling the budget. But all that said, it doesn't, man, it's just another indication of what I've been talking about for years, is post-pandemic, this city is still in the ICU, and in terms of taxpayers, in terms of economic activity. I wouldn't necessarily, spending doesn't help, but trust me, the economic horizon of the city of Montreal has changed since 2020. And I think anybody who thinks, oh, no, we'll go back to the way things were, is simply whistling past a graveyard.
James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.